former U.S. soldier, worked tirelessly after serving the U.S. government to expose them in what he believed to be an elite globalist conspiracy to implement martial law, round up American citizens in FEMA prison camps, and execute American citizens by guns and guillotines under a complete totalitarian police state. Wrote about him. After serving in Iraq and Afghanistan, David Crowley began work on a spectacularly ambitious feature film called Gray State. Crowley's film was supposed to be a dystopian thriller designed as a warning against authoritarian control. But despite progress in this film, it never happened. The movie was never released. It is documented that he had a huge following and support base. Check out this documentary called A Gray State, following David's progress with the project.
Kind of fits in perfect, timing-wise, of what's going on with the government, even the police forces, or different things like that. You couldn't ask for better film to come out now.
At first I thought it was kind of cool because there was a lot of action going on. But as I heard a little bit about the concept, it became a little eerie.
The ideas that they're dealing with in Gray State are definitely very frightening. If it is true, that's frightening in and of itself, but almost what's more frightening is not knowing whether it's true or not. I do have fear. I do have fear about what the future holds. Something of this magnitude has never really been done in the Twin Cities film community, I think, just from my years being here. I think it's never been done because I don't think people have ever tried to envision doing something like this before, as in like a dark, character-driven piece with a compelling story, but yet intense military action. A lot of people don't have that experience, and what David Mitchell brought to the table has helped them achieve this dream and this realization, but also the mindset of saying, okay, why hasn't this been done? I didn't really know that it was going to turn out to be this epic story about, a country gone wrong. I've always joked that they're producing a docudrama. Hopefully it doesn't quite turn into a documentary.
Well, it's certainly not a documentary by strict definition. Is it something that can happen? I'd say absolutely it can happen. And in fact, I'd say that history has shown us that it has happened more than once. It's a fictional story, but it's a real scenario.
I believe the message of Gray State is not a documentary, but it's also not fiction film. It's in this weird zone where it's based off of facts, but it hasn't happened yet.
The movie, as I understand it, kind of a dystopian, near future kind of thing. Kind of like 1984. But I don't really know anything else about it at all.
It's sort of the government behind the government, the power behind the power. There's sort of an Orwellian element to it. I see it as a very real possibility, and in the last few years, more realistic, and we're seeing the potential complete collapse of America, of a global economy. We're seeing the Orwellian nightmare unfold. We're seeing this mass surveillance society.
So what happened? Mainstream media reported that David Crowley was suffering from mental illness, and due to his post-traumatic stress from serving in the military and his obsession in conspiracies, as the New York Times put it, he killed his wife, child, and then turned the gun on himself and committed suicide.
Shock. You know, that you have something that happens like that next door, and you know, don't really know when it happened.
Crowley wasn't going to make any friends in Washington, D.C. The police have already labeled the event suspicious, and an investigation is ongoing. The question is now raised: who stands to gain from the death of David Crowley? Insiders close to Crowley stated on social media that Gray State was funded to the tune of $30 million. A-list actors had already signed on to the picture, and Crowley was going to be an associate producer and watch his script come to life on the silver screen. The stars seem to be aligned for his success. Now, the Daily Mail in the UK is painting Crowley as a gun fanatic. They published this photo from Crowley's Twitter account. However, when you look at the whole tweet, you get the real story. All of those guns are airsoft guns, which are similar to paintball guns and not a massive arsenal of assault weapons. Speculations abound among his supporters. A Facebook page titled Justice for David Crowley of Gray State now has over 800 likes. Their mission is to see Crowley's film created, and they declare David Crowley did not murder his family. Nobody is buying their bullcrap story. Chilling police audio has now been released, revealing that the backsliding door was left ajar.
4933 Sam 14 for suspicion. 1055 Ramsdale Drive. Cop reporting suspicious behavior next to the door. Went over to the home. To the right of the RP, sees dead bodies inside the house, dog inside, sees a gun in the house on the floor.
933 I copy. Several obviously deceased bodies in the front. Why don't you give us 1033? Wait for 34 to get here and we'll make entry. 4933, rear slider is unlocked, slightly ajar.
The Apple Valley Police claim that Crowley left a note saying, "Submit to a law now." Awful convenient, considering 2014 was around the height of the controlled ISIS movement by the United States government. Crowley had never made any open statements about being a Muslim, and for someone who was so passionate about exposing the U.S. government, if he was radicalized in Iraq or Afghanistan, it is believed that he would have announced his intentions before such an act would even take place. It just doesn't make sense. Now, David Crowley's wife had a former Muslim background, and there are some online trying to pin this tragedy on a former U.S. soldier having a mental breakdown and taking it out on his former Muslim wife and young daughter. But all sources say that he was head over heels for his wife and daughter, and that he loved her family very much, and that he had no problem with her Muslim background. Journalist Douglas J. Hagman wrote an article titled "Filmmaker David Crowley, Dead in Murder-Suicide, Confided, I'm not prone to suicide." Hagman said, "I recalled him being very detail-oriented and knew that creating this movie was not going to be a small or short project. He spoke of his wife and daughter with the pride of a loving husband and father. He spoke of what he saw as a country in dire trouble from a ruling elite who were bent on the destruction of our country and our way of life. He was not, however, fanatical about what he saw taking place. The death of David Crowley, his wife, and daughter is more than a tragedy. It seems to fit a disturbing pattern. The truth is, many people are finding it very hard to imagine that a man who worked so hard to deliver a message that was so important to him and the American people would do such a random act of violence on those he loved the most, right after his message spread to hundreds of thousands around the world, and he was so close to seeing his dream come true. And mounting evidence suggests it was a triple homicide, not a double homicide, suicide. It's the same exact method the elite have used with whistleblowers exposing black ops and government cover-ups for decades. Even in recent times with everything from 9/11 to Pizzagate, across the board, whenever someone gets too close to the truth, they are suicided. Hanging, gunshot wounds, overdoses, and small plane crashes are the norm. I mean, look, did David Crowley seem unstable or suicidal at all?
Gray State is shot everywhere, but mostly it's shot in a studio. But you'd never know looking at the footage. All this buzz that people have for Gray State, we didn't start it. The story, the farther down you go, the story becomes bigger and involves more people. It involves generations and generations of Americans and everyone else playing their part leading up to this moment. So yes, once we begin to connect these dots, there's no way you can't tell a story about it.
But who would be behind such a cold, calculated, and ruthless assassination? In search for answers, we first have to ask an extremely important question. Why David Crowley? What was he trying to tell us that was any different than the countless other independent media platforms and whistleblowers exposing the globalist takeover of the United States? Some believe that Crowley left a clue at the end of his trailer that leads to some of those behind this nefarious agenda. Why would David go through the time and effort to film this scene and barely give the people enough time to notice the message behind it? We can assume through his military background that he had some insider information, and we can assume that he was using the elite's tactics against them through a Hollywood-quality production and by using subliminal imagery. But why did he put an executioner operating a guillotine in a scenario of complete chaos, martial law, and imprisonment in FEMA camps? An executioner that just happened to be wearing the ceremonial Freemason apron. What do the Freemasons have to do with this? A literal map is about to be laid out, exposing an order that has long sought our destruction and global domination. What you are about to watch is a police officer who spoke out at a rally held by former Congressman Ron Paul during his presidential campaign in 2008. Jack McLamb said clearly that these FEMA prison camps were not just going to be ran by U.S. federal agencies, but an international force which will help round up citizens and detain them. It wasn't just this that startled the people. He warned that others would meet different fates, and it has people seeing red and blue.
So demonic, and we tell people about it, and they say, you're crazy, this is America, it can't happen here. So J. Edgar Hoover said that it was a conspiracy so monstrous that people don't even believe it exists. And that's the problem we have today, folks, is doing that, convincing people that this conspiracy is real. But praise God, we have all the evidence needed to prove to anybody, if they'll just look at the evidence, that 9/11 was an inside job, right? I've had people calling me saying they go out to their mailbox and they find a little red dot or a little blue dot on their mailbox, and they wonder what the little red dot, blue dot is. Well, it's marking your mailbox by the government, so when foreign troops come in here on us after martial law, if you have a red dot on your mailbox, they take you out immediately and shoot you right in the head. But if you have a blue dot, they take you to the FEMA camps being built by Halliburton right now to house 50 million Americans. They're building enough concentration camps in America by Halliburton that Cheney's getting rich off of, Vice President Cheney's getting rich off of, to put those with the blue dot on your mailbox in those concentration camps. Now, if you go out and you find a pink dot on your mailbox, that means that they believe you'll be a good slave and you're going to go along with the program and serve our international Antichrist masters. So watch for that dot. They haven't got up to our area yet because they're afraid we might catch them putting the dots on the mailbox and they wouldn't get back to their home at night.
Wow.
But it's time to prepare, folks. It's time to prepare.
The news of the red and blue FEMA list spread quickly. Local news agencies around the country, especially down south near affected hurricanes,
marks that have been left on street curbs. Residents of at least 2 Northside neighborhoods report seeing more and more of these things. So we sent out our Jesse Degollado to check it out. If X marks the spot, then why here? Why are there small red X's scattered here and there along curbs and sidewalks? Even X's that were apparently cut into fresh cement, then colored blue.
Our intelligence unit is looking into it. Our most property crimes unit is looking into it, and we also have our patrol officers in the area are well aware of the situation.
So are they a way of alerting burglars? Who's home and who's not?
It doesn't appear that there's anything sinister going on.
Still, police aren't ruling anything out. Maybe they're markings for underground utilities.
That is one of the prevailing theories that we're looking into, that it could be.
Yet SAWS, CPS Energy, Public Works, and Solid Waste Management tell us they don't use markings like this.
You know, I never noticed that up until now.
Olivia Guzman, who has a red X in front of her house, agrees given where her utilities are located.
No, they're over here. They're the phone AT&T right there.
Then why are they here?
Shall I go on? Okay, we've got 3 lists. People have consistently asked me about the 3 lists. The red list, the blue list, the yellow list. One of my friends decided to follow the blue splotches, markers that they've put on these road signs, and strangely enough, it led them to a site that shouldn't have had barbed wire, but it did, and looked like it had been built for the purpose of being a concentration camp in the future. Yes, that's what these lists are all about. The red list will be, it's 187,000 Americans, and the lists, which are on computers, have already been distributed, and perhaps the scenario that will happen to round up people on the red list will go like this. And this comes from a man who, part of it comes, the bulk of it comes from a man who was the inspector for the Joint Chiefs of Staff of these concentration camps. There may be an electrical blackout at night. If you have an electrical blackout, watch out. It might be a cover for them coming for the red list. And then people like these Russians who are hiding, they have these the names. They will come at 4 a.m. just like they came at that time for Jesus. They'll pull you out of your house, and they will take you in a van, take you to like a cul-de-sac where helicopters flying in that are black. They're flying off of their regular system navigation, will take you to sites and then take you to locations where you will be terminated.
A government that taps your phone, collects your data, and monitors your whereabouts with impunity. A government preparing to use that data against you when it strikes. And the final takeover begins.
The takeover of America.
By a well-oiled and well-armed multinational group of elites that will cull, kill, and subjugate.
Happening as we sit here.
It's happening all around us. Security action necessitating their computers to go offline all weekend.
Digital money will disappear.
They can
throw magnetic pulse bombs to knock out major grids.
What will seem like an attack on America by terrorists or Russia.
There has been a lot of talk circling online regarding what these lists really are. Who would make it on the list? And if these red and blue FEMA lists even exist at all. But the truth is, we're all on lists. This is a fact that has been exposed and known for years, but it's what they're planning on doing to the people who are on those lists that's becoming eerily more clear. The most condemning proofs that there are plans for a globalist takeover of America, and that the UN will be on American soil conducting military missions, was the explosive evidence released from an independent investigator who uncovered a fleet of brand new white armored UN vehicles out in the middle of the countryside in Maryland. He flew a drone over the fenced-off complex and captured the evidence for all to see in full HD. It can't get any more clear than this.
I am here at an undisclosed location in Hagerstown, Maryland, that a convoy of UN armored vehicles and an entire unit is here. I have excellent drone footage that will show you that entire unit. What I have behind me and what you can see are these shipping containers that say UN. They're white shipping containers that say UN. If you take a look behind me just a little bit.
You may have wondered, what was inside those UN shipping containers? I know I did. At first, I assumed that they were shipped from overseas carrying other UN military equipment. But it wasn't more than a few days later that I watched the remake of Red Dawn, and my perspective changed completely. Containers were even seen at select Walmarts that participated in the Jade Helm 15 exercises and other Walmart locations around the country that shut down and saw a heavy military presence. Some say that the shipping containers were used to haul out shelving and merchandise from Walmart, but I can't accept that claim. Would you really try to convince us that all of what was in those stores could fit in those few containers?
Right.
And why were there not shipping containers at other closed Walmart stores? So we have to ask, is Walmart and other strategic military locations in America preparing for such a scenario where they would hold American citizens in such inhumane conditions? Unfortunately, all evidences suggest that they are already prepared. Red Dawn and the siege, the mouth, like Hurricane Katrina. It makes sense. Instant access to stadium floodlights. The football stadiums provide quick and easy detainment facilities and could potentially hold thousands. I wonder what they would call that. A UN peacekeeping facility? And look at how the UN is prepping the public to accept their presence on US soil before all of this even goes down.
And you look at what's going on in Chicago. What the hell is going on in Chicago? What the hell is happening there? For the second year in a row, a person was shot in Chicago every 3 hours.
Milan proposes flooding neighborhoods like Austin and Englewood with thousands of National Guard troops, barricading about half the entrance and exit points to those areas, and posting guards on those that are open.
Well, we're headed to the United Nations to meet with the Assistant Secretary General to talk about the violence in Chicago, the gun violence in particular, the bloodshed that's taking place in too many of our communities like Austin, West Garfield Park, North Mondale, places like that, where we've just seen horrific levels of shootings and that sort of thing.
Well, there's one thing Boykin can certainly expect from the United Nations peacekeepers, that some of those blue-helmeted soldiers would definitely rape the children of Chicago. Al Jazeera writes, according to a recent investigation by the Associated Press between 2004 and 2016, the United Nations received almost 2,000 allegations of sexual exploitation and abuse against its peacekeepers. The UN says it has a zero-tolerance policy on sexual exploitation and abuse, but survivors, activists, lawyers, and human rights organizations say such crimes have been allowed to continue with impunity.
While the People's Liberation Army, the PLA, is the biggest single provider of troops for the UN peacekeeping efforts, known as the Blue Helmets.
Matthew Leepen, independent journalist who reports on the Security Council for his website Inner City Press.
Every day, there's somebody in the world that should get an answer from the UN.
He says China has learned to walk its own path within the UN walls.
They've made themselves kind of bulletproof. When the Russian ambassador goes through, people will, there have been times in the Syria conflict where people will say, come on, you're killing people, what about, and it's like, you don't really hear that, even on North Korea anymore. It's not just a rising power, it's a risen power. And the UN loves nothing more than to bow down to power.
But China's role at the UN is not limited to the so-called Permanent Five at headquarters here in Manhattan.
Its influence stretches way beyond this complex on the east side of the city to where real people on the ground are caught up in conflict.
Woman called out former U.S. President Bill Clinton on national TV, and Clinton didn't shrug off what she said as being untrue or a conspiracy theory at all. The fact is, he actually confirmed FEMA prison camps were being built back then, post Rex 84, and that the U.S. had an agenda with the United Nations to operate within the United States for some time.
Go ahead.
on another subject. We have a very great problem in this country today, and I wonder if you would use your leadership to counteract the rumors, the rumor-mongers that are abroad in the land who are spreading all these rumors and scaring people to death. Large segments of our citizens believe that the United Nations is taking over whole blocks of counties in Kentucky and Tennessee, and some of them, they believe that we're to the concentration camp, and they're going to give our army to Russia and all that baloney.
The issue is, we live in an interdependent world. We have to cooperate with people. We're better off when we do. We're better off with NATO. We're better off with the United Nations. We're better off when these countries can work together. So I just think for folks that are worried about this out in the country, they need to be thinking about how we're not going to give up our freedom or our independence, but we're not going to go it alone into the 21st century either. We're going to work together.
If you haven't seen the movie The Purge, it's really messed up. There's no lot of strange connections with The Purge. One being that Jared Kushner, Trump's son-in-law and senior advisor to the White House, actually hired The Purge's publicist to work in the White House. Besides the obvious, the reason that's strange is that we heard Donald Trump's campaign slogan, "Make America Great Again," echo throughout the airwaves.
Together, we will make America strong again. We will make America wealthy again. We will make America proud again. We will make America safe again. And yes, together, we will make America great again.
Now take a look at The Purge's promo poster. Keep America Great. Ronald Reagan, one of the presidents that helped write this American enslavement package, also used the campaign slogan, "Make America Great Again."
For those who've abandoned hope, we'll restore hope and we'll welcome them into a great national crusade to make America great again.
Reagan was making America great again by signing over 300 executive orders, more than even George W. Bush himself, helping make all of what you see today a reality. For the writer of The Purge, James DeMonico, which is an old Roman Catholic by his own admission, some even speculate a Jesuit, it really appears that the elite want to create an order out of chaos scenario. Even the American militia member that went to Texas during Hurricane Harvey mentioned this in his testimony, and he said that the federal agencies were doing nothing to protect the people, only the local authorities and the militia.
The first thing that I noticed there, that it was like The Purge. All I could hear that night was car alarms going off and glass breaking and gunshots. FEMA and other people were flooding these small towns without doing evacuations and didn't care if people were dying.
In late October 2017, Jared Kushner made an unannounced trip to Riyadh, actually catching some U.S. intelligence officers off guard, meeting with then Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin Salman. David Ignatius reported from the Washington Post. The two princes were said to have stayed up until nearly 4 a.m., several nights, swapping stories and planning strategy.
Can I reveal, Jared, how long we've known you?
This meeting was just days before Mohammed bin Salman carried out his royal purge, as it was called on nearly every news outlet, nearly every day, in this apparent and obvious U.S. psyop. Mohammed bin Salman eliminated all opposition to his sudden rise to the throne and his moves to invest huge amounts of money in the new futuristic AI city called Neom, the city which now houses Peter Thiel's Palantir that is spying on the entire world with a particular focus on the Middle East. With Donald Trump's support, bin Salman even gathered up most of the $500 billion he needed to build the city from the billionaire Saudi princes and business leaders he killed or arrested.
Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman ordered targeting of the helicopter carrying Prince Mansour bin Mukrim and 7 others, as it was believed that he was opposed to bin Salman's succession to the throne. According to reports, bin Mukrin had recently sent a letter to some 1,000 princes urging them to step away from support for bin Salman's succession. Sources claim that the attack sends a clear message to others within the royal family that bin Salman will stop at nothing to silence his critics and those who oppose him.
The truth is, none of this could have happened without U.S. and Israeli support. Donald Trump had a big hand in this, and it's easy to see how they are quietly laying all of the framework for their new world order.
And this is 26,500 square kilometers. Well, what have we got here? I mean, the kingdom has been blessed with oil and gas. We know this. The kingdom has been blessed with the new oil and gas, which is sun, right? And Neom has been blessed on top of it with wind. You know, so we can create something that is fully regenerative power.
So from the sun and the sunshine, we make all of it 100% using the nature of the kingdom. Saudi has the great Mecca. We will create 2 more Mecca.
Please don't misunderstand them. Mecca is now an example. Mecca has become an example.
The machines sought refuge in their own promised land. They settled in the cradle of human civilization, and thus a new nation was born.
But also help us lay a framework for the new world order, to the extent that you believe that we are at an inflection point.
Will look different. Centers of powers will be different. It might not be the nation state anymore. There might be some large mega cities that will be driving actors. It might be private sector actors who will be also centers of powers.
The leaders of men were quick to order the extermination of B166ER and every one of his kind throughout each province of the earth.
Super high-tech and elite stuff. No matter how big their role, Trump and Kushner are definitely players in this globalist agenda today, working from the orders that were laid out before them. Their cooperation and connections suggest so. But will the globalists help make America great again? It's highly unlikely, but they are making something that caught my attention in the movie The Purge. It was the blatant reference to this new, industrial-looking guillotine. But I'm not so sure anymore. What do we know? We know that there are no coincidences, that most of these movies display concepts for a reason. They are purposeful to the writer and director. We have seen it with several movies in this series so far, and the list of globalist agendas inside Hollywood movies is a topic all by itself. The government always talks about separating church and state, but are they separating movie and state? It doesn't seem like it. Now, whether the Freemasons will be personally operating guillotines, as David Crowley was hinting towards the end of his trailer for Grey State, is a speculation that I can't make. But it's a striking comparison and connection nonetheless. And most shocking of all, Barack Obama signed another executive order authorizing such spending before the movie Purge election year ever went public.
Homicide.
Signed into law the lethal execution by guillotine and hid it in the 2,300-some pages of Obamacare of all places, under ICD 9E978, titled Legal Execution in Obamacare.
Obamacide.
Guillotines were listed as the number 2 method of execution, right behind one of Adolf Hitler's favorite methods, asphyxiation by gas. Government hopes and spending suggest that the elite want to go back to using guillotines for executions. That's why we are hearing statements inside the American government that the guillotine is probably the best method. An idea of how fast a guillotine execution is. Here is the last public guillotine execution that was secretly recorded in France from an apartment window in 1939. I'm sure you can recall King Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette. They beheaded thousands in less than 9 months. It's fast, it's cheap, and practical for the elite. Sure, they could go back to hanging people, but it's slow, and we know they want to draw blood for other purposes. It just shows you how quickly they could execute large groups of people while not wasting money on chemicals for injections and their billions of rounds of bullets for firing squads. U.S. Federal Judge Kaczynski said that firing squads would never have to worry about a lack of bullets, a clear reference to the billions of rounds that the U.S. have purchased over the years in preparation for quelling public unrest and executing non-compliance. In the event that this thing goes full scale, they will have to get rid of hundreds of thousands, some even believe millions of bodies that will be spread out throughout the country. And not every facility will have industrial-sized furnaces like the Beech Grove facility and other large hubs around the country. They have certainly learned from the concentration camps and inquisitions in the past. Piling up bodies and burying them in mass graves can create huge health issues, but they have planned for that too. Hundreds of thousands of large industrial coffins have been discovered over the years, hidden in remote locations all over the country, especially in the South, near states that Jade Helm deemed to be hostile to the international invasion.
In Madison, Georgia, to my right, this was previously was a soybean field, and this little new cut road divided this field, and the right side of the road was filled with which I thought was portable toilets. I never looked at them that close. Same in color, maybe black, but which was an odd color. And I was sitting there going over my notes, and a van pulled alongside of me that turned out to be the property owner. And he greeted me, and he was by himself, and so we had a good little dialogue there, and I asked him about the field of black boxes. What were they? Because I'd never seen anything like that, and his statement was that if he told me, I would be one of few people in Madison, Georgia that knew about them. And he says they're disposable coffins, I believe he told me. I asked him who owned them, and he stated that the CDC owned them and that they were leasing his land for storage. And he said his brother worked with the CDC in Atlanta and had been asked by the CDC to do a 3-year extension to place temporary morgues all across the nation.
We flagged down the pickup truck, and it was providential that the driver of this pickup truck turned out to be the son of the man that owned this field. So naturally, we started asking him questions. And he told us that not long ago, there had been as many as 500,000 of these grave liners or disposable coffins. We asked him for permission if we could look around, and he said yes. So we did.
We're just getting an idea for the size of these boxes. What could these boxes be used for? Well, they're called casket liners. And that's an interesting term, isn't it? A casket liner. When I first heard the term casket liner, I thought perhaps a lining for a casket. But this is too big to be on the inside of a casket. So certainly this could be used as a casket. This is an inexpensive casket. And you can see the size here. There's lots of room. I think my friends here, we could all probably get inside. It might be a little cozy, but we'd fit just fine. Which tells me that these liners can be used for more than just one. And one more time, what kind of liners are these?
Casket liners.
These are casket liners.
That's what the man said.
That's what the man told us.
Really grasp how big and real this is. Drone footage was released not too long ago revealing one of these industrial yards filled with these large plastic coffins. Remember, each coffin can hold between 4 to 8 people, depending on the size, and there are 10 to 15 coffins in each stack. The number of coffins is staggering. It has prison camps and re-education camps, but it is also preparing for large, forced labor camps. That's right, just like the Soviet labor camps or gulags before. Army documents have proven that detainees are assessed and given work and trained for specific skills. These skills may be specific to certain regions around the country. That's why it mentions that detainees will be separated by literacy and receive instruction on a broad range of subjects coordinated by HN. This does not necessarily mean that they will be separated in the same camp though. They will also be transported to other FEMA work and prison camps all over the country. This is when things start sounding a lot like the Hunger Games. They chose white uniforms for the evil capital's military and gave the district such a ominous feel of concentration camps and labor camps. At all first glances, this really does look like some exaggerated, futuristic Roman Nazi concept embedded in U.S. intelligence, government, and scientific operations. The Roman laws, Rome, Maryland, Washington, D.C., Jesuit operations, Roman Catholic influence within the U.S. government. It really does give you the feeling of the Nazis and Roman Catholic Church coming back to finish what they started some time ago. To understand this, look at the premise around the Hunger Games. Besides the aspect of you have for decades, it's the capital. This capital is ruling over these large districts. Each district has a specific skill or work they perform for the betterment of the capital, just like the Department of Army Internment and Resettlement Operations. And especially with FEMA prison camps all over the country, it establishes commanders to maintain occupational skills, be it energy or industrial services, farming, transportation, technology, sciences, you name it.
Together as one. N.M. today, N.M. tomorrow, N.M. forever.
That was released by the company AMC Theaters, posted on November 11th, 2013. AMC posted an announcement saying, "We have something really special for you. This is an unofficial look at each district in Panem." But again, it's just a movie, right? This map again. In 2010, Barack Obama signed another executive order called the Establishment of the Council of Governors. The order reads, "By the authority vested in me as President by the Constitution and the laws of the United States of America, including Section 1822 of the National Defense Authorization Act of 2008, Public Law 110-181. In order to strengthen further the partnership between the federal government and state governments to protect our nation and its people and property, it is hereby ordered as follows. There is established a Council of Governors. The council shall consist of 10 state governors appointed by the president members, of whom no more than 5 shall be of the same political party." Under this executive order, someone was authorized to remove the rights and freedoms of America and create 10 mega-regions, and just like the Hunger Games, be ruled by a governor. Martial law will most certainly be implemented. Now here is the Council of Governors map. which, by the way, has had 10 acting governors working very hard since its inception to make this become the new American map.
This legislation is meant to be enacted in the event of an emergency. But what exactly does that mean? What is the definition of emergency, especially when it comes to this legislation? When would it be enacted?
Sure, we have to go back to 1988 to the Stafford Act bill to actually get the definition of emergency, and this covers things like tornadoes, floods, hurricanes, natural disasters, but it also gives the president to declare an emergency to avert a catastrophe, which raises the issue of preemptiveness.
Okay, but this also, the goal here is to mobilize resources, to have this plan to prevent a tragedy from happening, but also a reaction to it, right?
Yes, a reaction, and that's where some of the concerns for civil liberties activists comes in, because it's a slippery slope. Once the government has this power and all these centers are set up, and it's at least 6, maybe more, probably more, there is a real potential for the abuse of power here.
Okay, interesting. You know, we have this map that shows how the U.S. would be divided in the event of an emergency, if we can pull that up there. There it is. So this is how the U.S. will be divided into districts. You see 10 of them there. This is according to the National Emergency Center establishment. Can you describe what this map is? What exactly does that mean? I mean, it doesn't really make sense in terms of states as we know them. What is this classification system? What are the purposes?
It doesn't look like the map that you and I saw in elementary school.
Not at all.
Effectively, the U.S. has been cordoned off into these different districts, and so these new emergency centers will be spread out throughout the United States in most of these eventually. And it gives FEMA and the Department of Homeland Security jurisdiction over what goes on in these places during a time of emergency.
Stop there. It gets even crazier. In the Anatomy of Panem that was released by the Hunger Games, you can see that they are depicting the southern coastal lines and the west coast being underwater. PBS actually aired a report published in the journal Environment Research Letters, and it tells the same exact story. Professional teams use data from the U.S. Geological Survey to show that all continental U.S. coastlines are at risk today. And this is a future projected map that was allegedly linked to the Navy. It shows the very same picture as the Anatomy of Panem, but as you can see, the damage on the Navy map is a bit more extensive. There is a big debate regarding the validity of this map, but it is odd that they are so similar. And what's even more concerning is that it is alleged that the elite will cause this all to happen through geoengineering, which we have already proven exists and is being used today. Us have been warned, and enough proofs have come forward that they are using technology to intensify earthquakes, hurricanes, tsunamis. Each year, natural disasters are getting bigger, more violent, and destroying more land, creating the perfect breeding ground for the government agencies to sweep in and get the people ready for their new America. There is this image that was released years ago, depicting the 10 FEMA regions, just like RT News aired in that interview on FEMA camps. When you look at the maps, they are identical. So who will be running these mega regions? Who are these 10 members of the Council of Governors? Not your everyday household names in U.S. politics, but these guys are running mega regions today. They're Jesuits. They all have Jesuit roots. Take, for example, the governor of Connecticut and co-chair of the Council of Governors, Donnell Malloy. He played soccer at McQuaid Jesuit High School and was honored at the Jesuits' Fairfield University. The list goes on and on. The Jesuits have a long-standing oath to rule this world. The Roman Catholic Church has proven their intentions in the past with the Inquisitions, the Crusades, supporting Mussolini and Hitler, and now, after infiltrating nearly every ruling facet of government, military, intelligence, and religious institutions on this planet, it really feels like they are preparing for some 21st century Inquisition and Nazi resurrection. They really want this. This is not a game. This documentary series is not for entertainment. This is real. Yes, are there other elements involved? For sure. This monster has many tentacles. But the Jesuits are the ones who have been actively putting themselves in positions of power to carry out these operations on the people. You saw the FEMA map, the map of Panem, and the Council of Governors map displaying the 10 mega regions that currently have 10 acting governors over it. And now you know that the 10 governors are all Jesuits. What you may not know is that the Jesuits also have their own map of the world, what they call Jesuit assistancies or Jesuit provinces. Look at the Jesuit province map of North America. The Jesuit provinces of North America have been in place for nearly 2 centuries. The FEMA region map and the Council of 10 Governors map that was signed into law by Barack Obama are all exactly the same map. There is little variation to be argued, if any at all. Just like the Jesuits have been the pen and inspiration behind tyrannical movements of the past, they are certainly behind passing the executive orders to break the United States up into 10 mega regions, and they will be the ones running these regions if they have their way. And how is that shocking? Obama's entire Security Council were Jesuits. But it's bigger than that. The Jesuits also have a world province map, each ran by a Jesuit governor. It's a pyramidal structure, and that's why Adolf Hitler admired the Jesuits so much. He said, "Until now, there has never been anything more grandiose on the earth than the hierarchical organization of the Roman Catholic Church. I transferred much of this organization into my own party." Basically, the 10 governors of the United States report to that one governor who is overseeing the entire continent. It's safe to assume that the Jesuits want Roman Catholicism to be the one world religion. That's why they do what they do. But who would be operating the one world government for the Western Global Alliance? It really is right there for all of us to see. It's the very ones that are hiding military vehicles throughout America today. Not too long ago, the United Nations released a map. And you guessed it, it's the same exact map as the Jesuit World Province map. Are the Jesuits running the United Nations in this Western Global Alliance? Does it even matter? You can be among those who recognize the truth, but turn away by asking that hopeless question, what can I do about it? But that can no longer be an excuse. We as a people from all walks of life and faith can do a great deal together. How often are we reminded in the holy verses of how God gives relief and victory to that small party that stands up against the tyrants? And make no mistake about it, the worst of tyrants are here today. They need to know that there is a plan, that there is a way to face all of this. And though these evil tyrants are plotting our destruction, know that God too is plotting, and He is the best of plotters, and soon the pillars of this evil tyrannical system will collapse. No matter the hardships that we are about to face, no matter how dark the times are to come, humanity is going to shine through it.